So there is a lot happening right now in the peace negotiations between Russia and Ukraine. So to help us unpack where things sit today, we're joined by Kateryna Lisunova, a Ukrainian journalist and media advisor at Razom for Ukraine and a former congressional correspondent for Voice of America. We're recording this at 2 p.m. Central on Tuesday, December 2nd, and hopefully this quick interview helps get everyone up to speed on the current talks. So be sure to follow Kateryna at the links in the description below. And with that, let's get to the conversation. All right, Kateryna, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us today. This has been chaotic, for me at least, trying the most chaotic series of negotiations that we've seen in a while. So I want to just start with a very broad question. Where does it sit?
It's a good broad question. So, whatever I say right now, we need to realize that things are actually changing every single second. And as a good example, I can tell you some internal information. Like, for example, Dan Driscoll should have been in Kyiv this Saturday. Everything has been planned, but then they cancel it in the last moment because the delegation already been flying to Miami, and they didn't want to have a double meetings. Everything was prepared for that, but then it was canceled, and it shows how everything is changing very fast. And even not to even mention that Yermak, who was one of the leads of the Ukrainian delegation, had been he resigned just a day before the delegation went to Miami. So this is how it's all changing very fast. But where are we standing at this moment? At this moment, we are waiting for results from the meeting in Moscow. And today in Ireland, Zelensky said that he is waiting for results in Moscow as well. And he says if the results would show him some signals that Russians are actually willing to pursue with the fair negotiations, he is willing to pursue meetings and maybe meet Witkoff in Kyiv if he's willing to do that, and to proceed with more negotiations, as long as he would see that Russians are actually serious. And in this statement in Ireland, Zelensky was actually more concrete in his statements. He said that Ukrainians need clarity of security guarantees, of anything else that would give them understanding that this war will not just blow up with bigger power in 1 year after Ukrainians would be forced to reduce their military capacities, every capabilities, and then in 1 year or 2 years, Russia will strike again. And we need to realize that Ukraine right now, works as a fortification to protect all the Europe. If Ukraine falls, there is nothing stops Russia to go further to Poland or any other countries, which Kremlin explicitly many times already said that they have interest in bringing back from the USSR time. They have this doctrine, that they've been publishing so-called security guarantees before attacking Ukraine in 2022. Now, basically, Russia repeated many times that they feel threatened by Europe and NATO, and they think that collapse of USSR is the biggest mistake in the world, and etc. and etc. So we don't need to guess much what would be next step of Russia if Ukraine falls, because they're talking about it explicitly. Although, which is a very interesting sign as well, Putin, when he begins the meeting with Witkoff just right now, the first thing he said that they're not willing to attack Europe. They never had any thought of war with Europe. But if Europe wants war, they're willing to give it to them. This is what Putin said to Witkoff just right now when I start the meeting. And we all remember that before attacking Ukraine, before attacking Georgia, Chechnya, and all of it, Russia was explicitly saying, we're not seeking for the war with such and such country. And so this is another sign that they will do that. They will do that immediately if Ukraine would not have these fortifications. If we're talking about, I think I missed some very important points about what exactly they end up in Miami. I can give you some internal scoop information.
That was going to be my next question. Is the Ukrainian delegation met with the United States this weekend in Miami, and from what I've seen, very little information came out of that. I don't know if that's good or bad, but what are you hearing?
So, first of all, I hear a lot of noise because of a lack of information, and this vacuum, it's been filled with a lot of suspicions, like some guesses. even the fact that everybody been commenting on the faces and of participants, how they look like, what they're and trying to guess what does that mean. It also shows how little do we know actually. There is a reason for that, and it's quite objective reason that all such negotiations need to be as much protected and silent as possible. But if you want to know on a position of Ukrainians and some things that I already know and I got from my sources who've been participating in the meetings, I know few things. So there were some proposals regarding Donbas brought up by American side, but Ukrainian side politely reminded that they're thinking that any territorial conversations should be left for presidential level, and this is what they're repeating constantly. They were talking though about contact line, the line where the war is actually happening. So if we're talking about any territorial conversations, there was an update on what is going on the contact line. And Ukrainian delegation also explicitly many times repeated that if they're going to talk about any territories, they will start with the contact line. They were briefing Americans on the situation on the contact line, specifically Hnatov, who is responsible for updating on the frontline situation. He was delivering that message. And here we can see a very interesting thing, though. Because, as I said, because of this vacuum of information, people doesn't know much what is going on. I've seen in American media a lot of information which actually not factual and not the way it is. And the reason for this, because as I see it, many times American journalists or even just regular people emotionally don't understand the difference between conversation on possible territorial concessions, conversation about the contact line, and conversation about territories in general. So if there was a conversation about the contact line, it doesn't mean that it was a conversation about the territorial concessions from Ukrainian side. So, and that should be very clear. I think we have a little bit of a problem of wording, of messaging, of delivering information in a concrete way, because from what I know, and I think it's very important as well from our viewers to understand that it looks like there is a picture being painted of Ukraine being very weak and on the edge of agreeing on anything, and Ukrainians doesn't feel like that. They feel that they're, which is obviously true, independent country, and it's for them to decide what they're gonna do next. And we're coming back to the statement of Zelensky just today in Ireland when he said that Ukrainians want to have clarity. If there is any deal, there should be clarity and explicit explanation of what would be the security guarantees, how to be sure that Russia will not proceed with its war, and etc., etc.
So what do you think they're taking to Russia right now? Because there's something being presented, we would think, to Putin, and logic seems like something would have been at least loosely agreed upon in Miami, and now they're hearing what Putin has to say. Any thoughts on what that might be?
So let's start with the public statements. Now, Zelensky said there are 20 points as of now. There are 20 points in this document. I remember we started with 28, which were like literally dream wishes of Russia.
A little rough, yeah.
Yeah, but I don't know how to explain it otherwise. Like it was like the most daring wishes of Russia. Now we have 20 points, at least from Zelensky statements. He says that it looks much better. He said that territory question is the toughest one. And as we know, that Ukrainians are saying that that conversation should be left for presidential level. So we should expect that this, if there are like 20 points, I have a pencil here. So we have 20 points. The point of territorial concession in this document is marked as for presidential meeting. So this one, we can call it as blank or like undecided yet, etc. Another big conversation and I'm right now actually telling very public information that Zelensky said. Another big conversation that they had in Miami was regarding seizing Russian assets. And most of them are on the territory of Europe. And he said that in those conversations, it was difficult conversation, difficult part of conversation as well, because as he's saying, he he cannot talk about Europeans without Europeans, and he cannot agree of doing anything with those assets or whatever without Europeans being at the table. And this is what he explicitly said. There are a lot of articles right now which are hinting on the fact that supposedly United States agreed to return those assets to Russia, or planning to use them for some kind of internal business of United States. And there is a big question how exactly those assets are playing there. But this is a part of this document at this point. I think what we can expect from this 20 points, because it was changed in Geneva, then it was changed in Miami. It was changed twice with conversations between United States and Ukraine. And Ukraine has said that it looks better now. But there are some points unresolved, which territory is one of them, 100%, and security guarantees are unresolved. I suppose the Russian frozen assets are unresolved right now. So at this point, we may say what we know for sure is like a blank, unresolved, marked as unresolved in this 20 points. These three things are unresolved at this point. I suppose from that document that we've seen, maybe number of demands has been changed, curbed, more favorable to Ukraine. And as we see that Russia feels emboldened, whatever they brought to Russians right now, when we don't know the precise document, we know the things that haven't been resolved. But if taken into account that the document has been changed twice and was changed in favor to Ukraine, and Russia is very much emboldened and they don't feel that they need to do any concessions. So I would say that I'm not expecting from Russians to accept any document that they're going to see right now. And this analysis, I'm telling you, just from what we know at this point.
I mean, when the 28-point plan came out, Putin said that wasn't good. So if that's shifted more in favor of Ukraine, then it's hard. I agree. It's hard to imagine that we're going to have some incredible news like that in the next 24 hours. Where is Europe in all of this? Because I thought they were kind of stepping in to provide their own plan, and that seems to have faded.
Europe is quite lost at this point, because obviously emotionally, I think they irritated and maybe even pissed off that they've been not involved in this completely. And I think the statement of Zelensky when he says he cannot talk about Russian frozen assets, which are on territory of Europe, without Europeans being at the table. Obviously, Zelensky is bringing them as much as possible to the table. You know that they had a phone call this Monday in the morning in Miami between Witkoff, Medov, Starmer, Macron, I think Merz, and Zelensky. You know, Zelensky was in Paris at that point. They had a phone call. He connected all those participants to the conversation to directly talk with Witkoff. I think it was the most direct conversation they had so far with American side regarding those documents, because from what I'm hearing, they were not able to have any meaningful conversation with White House Europeans regarding all of this document, all of the stuff that's going on. I think it was like the most direct conversation they had at this point. It was led by Zelensky. I think Europeans are definitely, so when they're upset, I think they also, like at some point, if we're talking emotionally, I think it's also almost a betrayal to them, and they definitely trying to reinforce their own powers and do something to impact. Betrayal is a very emotional word, but what I mean, like if anything is happening behind their backs and behind the backs of allies, which are Ukraine, Europe, and this is how this document emerged. without any other conversation with anyone. If being honest, and not even everybody from administration was involved in that. Yes, so no, and definitely they feel not very good about it, and they're trying to reinforce their powers. We will see, I think, more support to Ukraine in the nearest day. We already see it. We see number of visits of Zelensky to Europe right now. We see how Europe is saying that they're willing to provide more aid to Ukraine. There were a number of statements right now from European leaders that they will give more support to Ukraine during this few days when negotiations happens, which is very explicit sign that Europeans willing to reinforce Ukraine and to for Ukraine to not feel abandoned and lost, pressured, because they see that Ukraine is being pressured, and this is quite easy to see. I don't think you need to have like big analysis for that. And I think what they're doing right now, they're explicitly trying to give more power to Ukraine politically, by statement, by aid, and to reinforce Ukraine to feel capable to do more independent negotiations and feel as an independent country, but not a country who being pressured and feel small, etc. So definitely this is what they do. And I think also Europeans are right now at the very sad and critical pivotal decision right now, because they feel more and more that they cannot rely on the United States. And I think they are, and I think it's not something that I think we can see it, that they're trying to be more independent in military capacities and in any other way. So this is where Europeans are.
Makes sense. You mentioned that Yermak stepping aside and resigning here recently. What impact, if any, has that had on the negotiations, do you think?
It's a good question. I think it's reinforced the negotiation, because he had this investigation hanging over him. Ukrainian society didn't have much support to him, and at some point, if you have all those things, your positions as a negotiator are weakened. And I think it's reinforced the negotiation process, and also it helped Zelensky, because all of this had made on him a lot of pressure from Ukrainian society. And now, after he made this decision, which was very important and in a way pivotal decision, because he was like Yermak was very close to Zelensky, and among Ukrainians, no one even there were a lot of jokes that it's so interesting. Like, just so you know, after there was like a first statement of Zelensky, remember when that document emerged, the first like real meaningful address that he gave, he said Ukraine has a choice right now: either lose their ally or lose their dignity. It was an emotional statement, but Ukrainians were actually criticizing it, and they're saying like, so you're saying we can lose everything except Yermak? Because of that, so there was like a lot of jokes about it, because at that point Ukrainian society felt the situation differently. They were like, okay, we have a bad deal, we just need to like throw out this deal and say no to this deal and pursue with the corruption scandal. We need to pursue with all the investigations and put in jail people who need to be put in jail. They were like, okay, we don't like this stuff, you just need to say no to that and pursue with corruption investigation. That was Ukrainian demand. They were like, this is a bad document, just say no to it and go ahead with investigation. And so when he actually did a step towards the investigation, it's been received by Ukrainians as a very good step, and it's actually reinforced the support of Ukrainians for Zelensky, which actually helps him to navigate in these negotiations, because it's much easier to do it when you have support of your people, and it gave him more support. So it was good decision. If in short, if I can give you just one word, it was a good thing. And if you want to know some scoop and like internal information, Yermak, he had very low support among Ukrainians. Ukrainians didn't like Yermak, and he didn't have a lot of support among Americans either. Most of American negotiators didn't like him, and I'm telling you this from a lot of sources from American government. They didn't like him either. So I cannot tell you that we lost some important negotiator here. It sounds tough.
Gotcha. Yeah.
I don't want to be tough, but this is objectively how it is.
So, what are you watching for here in the next couple days and weeks? What's on your radar?
That's another good question. You have a great question, Preston. Okay, what I'm watching. Like, definitely I'm watching for what is going on in Moscow. I'm definitely watching closely for American administration for any public statements and stuff because we kind of already been here uh, throughout not that long time of Trump's administration. We've seen situations when Trump starts to be very tough on Ukraine, and we feel like it's the end of the world. We need to save Ukraine. Everybody activates all the powers, and then he suddenly pivots to completely different point of view, and being complete and saying about the sanctions on Russia and all of that. So in the next few days, what I expect, it's a pivot from this current statements to completely favorable to Ukraine, just because this is what we've seen, and it sounds ridiculous and unbelievable at this period moment in a lifetime, in history. But in a few days, we may see the picture when everybody is very supportive of Ukraine in the United States, but just because we already been here, and it might seem like a very risky, how you call it, prediction. But it's already happened before many times, so nobody's seen it. Like just at the meeting in the United Nations, I've been there when Zelensky met Trump, and then he released this amazing supportive of Ukraine statement, which when he said Ukraine will not just win, it may take Russian territory, it will take full territory of Ukraine. Take back all the territory. And when we were reading this, we were like, oh my God, it's like such a big change. And then sanctions on Russia. And I think in the nearest future, I would expect for such thing. I'm looking closely to the White House administration. I'm looking closely to what's going to happen in Moscow. I'm looking closely to who's going to be the next envoy to Ukraine, because we know that Kellogg is about to resign. And from what I've heard, that Dan Driscoll is planned to be the one, special envoy to Ukraine. Yes. And if he would be, he need to build a better relationship with Ukrainians, because his relationship started with not the greatest point. He brought this 28 points of a deal to Bankova. Bankova, it's like White House, but in Ukraine. Bankova is like a street where administration of Zelensky located. So he brought this deal. So I would say the start of his relationship wasn't that good, like was quite rocky. So he would need to build those relationships. At least at this point, he is named to be the next envoy to Ukraine. So this is what I'm expecting, if he will still be that person, or anything would change. We all know, it's very public information, that he's a close friend to J.D. Vance. And so how he gonna impact those relationship, it's a big question as well. So the role of Witkoff, this is what I'm expecting in the next few days, because there is some information emerging right now, which it's not from my sources. It's more like from media, etc. So I cannot tell you this as a fact, but there is some information that there might be more tapes released of Witkoff negotiations soon. So if such thing happens, it's going to be another conversation about his role and all of that. So this is what I'm expecting as well. And I do not expect that there are going to be some specific deal in the nearest few weeks. I seriously don't see that. I seriously don't see that. And if there would be any sign of it, we're going to have another conversation with you, Preston. We're going to have another video. But at this point, I do not see anything like this happening. And I can give you another scoop that among Ukrainian officials, there are thoughts that some kind of a, I don't know, deal or something may emerge like in February or January. Like not necessarily something that's gonna end the war. I didn't see that either, but some kind of movements forward. But at this point in the nearest days, I don't see the deal being happening. I'm just wondering how all the participants of all these negotiations, how their position will change and what's going to be their future.
It is a lot to keep track of, so we really appreciate your reporting, Kateryna. Thank you so much for taking the time to walk through it today.
Thank you so much. I'm very happy to be with you.
So thank you so much to Kateryna for taking the time to walk through all that on last minute notice, by the way. Just yesterday, sent her a note and said, can you please kind of break this down? I'm getting confused with the number of reports coming in every different direction. I think she did a great job of kind of walking through where things sit right now and what to expect here in the coming days. So, of course, be sure to follow Kateryna's work at the links in the description below. But that's all we got for now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time.